All right, so I hope hope you guys rejoin me again because I had to make a new one, and I apologize for that. Everything was going well. All right, here we go. We're live with the lottery. Let's see. All right, now ESPN just doesn't want me to watch the lottery. There we go. All right, let me lower this. All right, you guys good? Everyone could hear me? Hey, if you can go on the old chat, if it's possible, and let people know we're here. This is where we're doing it. Um, but I don't know what the hell happened with the last one. Drink Stout, can you hear me? Is sound coming in? All right, good. All right, so all right, good. I apologize for that. This happened. This is like the third time that's happened, and the reason why is stupid Safari. When I do it on Safari, they don't let me pick my camera and whatever. So anyway, what we'll do is we're gonna go team by team after the lottery because we're pressed for time. So right now I got it going right now. Uh, they're doing the intro and everything, and we'll just have to, I'll tell you my thoughts here and there, but all right. So in the one that I just deleted, I gave the odds, right? And think by at this point you guys know what the odds are. So the one thing that we should start off by saying is this is not a draft lottery to get excited about, much like last year. I know it's Montreal, so they'll make a big deal about it. Shane Wright's been the consensus number one from the very beginning. You want to go all the way back to maybe 2 years. People thought he was going to be the number one back then. I would say that if you heard my podcast yesterday, that I don't think he's played the way you'd expect a number one overall pick in a high octane, offensive friendly league like the OHL would play. All right, so they got Jamie Hirsch and Kevin Weeks doing it good. Good. All right, I got scared. I thought they would have some other weird people there, but Hirsch and Weeks have good chemistry. So 1 Montreal, 2 Arizona, 3 Seattle, 4 Philly, 5 New Jersey, 6 Chicago, although it's conditional. Could go to Columbus, 7 Ottawa, 8 Detroit, 9 Buffalo, 10 is, I think, San Jose, or 10 is Anaheim, 11 San Jose, 12 Columbus, and that's their own pick. And then I think it goes Islanders, Winnipeg. Yeah, Islanders 13, Winnipeg 14, and then both Vancouver 15, Vegas 16, but they both have the same odds, 0.5%. McAvoy's playing tonight. Yeah, all right, good. He didn't make the Norris finals. I was surprised with that. I thought he'd get it, but Hedman kind of got it over him, I guess. So again, a team cannot win the lottery if they're in the 13 to number one pick. If they're in the 12 to 16 slots, you can only go, the highest you can go is 10 spots. So let's say, for example, if Columbus at 12 wins the lottery, they'll be picking the number 2 pick, but they can't win the number 1 pick. Vancouver, if they win the lottery, they'll be picking 5, not 1 or 2. So that's the new rule. And of course, this is the beginning of that limitation where you can only win the lottery twice in 5 years. I'll make this a little bit louder. But again, I'm not too excited about this lottery. I know, again, but at the same time, I'm just a draft. Oh yeah, wow, Scotty. All right, no comment. Anyway, we're going to keep this family friendly. I was thinking about getting a. Let me lower this. I was thinking about getting a bell like a bell on a hotel desk, and every time they did something on the broadcast that made me mad, I'd hit the bell instead of just going crazy and cursing. All right, so they're doing it remote. They don't have the dudes present. All right, Bill Armstrong, the GM of Coyotes, he's got they kind of got a lot of stuff going on there. So Ron Francis is wearing a mask. No one behind them is wearing a mask. So I don't understand that. All right, Chuck Fletcher, Flyers. He's got a lot of problems. Not personally, but with his team, he does. Tom Fitzgerald, like I said on the podcast, so the Devils, he said he's might consider trading the pick, but they always kind of say stuff like that. Kyle Davidson for the Blackhawks. He's pro prospect heavy. He's gonna gut that franchise. I'm pretty sure he is. He's praying right now that he doesn't win the lottery. Dorian with Ottawa. Melnick died, so I don't know what kind of situation that's going to create. But they fired Pierre Maguire. Eyes him in Detroit. Eyes plan not working thus far, although they have a couple of good prospects. Verbeek is now, I guess, the interim, right? Is he officially the GM in Anaheim? Kikalainen in Columbus. And of course, they have that conditional pick with Chicago. Lou Lamoriello, that looks like the face of a guy who just fired his freaking really good head coach. Look at Lou. He is serious. Cheveldayoff, he's got a lot of pressure on him. He keeps drafting smaller players, and it's not the Winnipeg way. Patrick Allvin, the guy, the new guy in Vancouver after Benning got fired. All right, so Derek Englund is representing the Golden Knights, not McCrimmon or McPhee. So they have a ranking right now. They have Wright 1, Slafkovsky 2, Cooley 3, Savoy 4, Nemeth 5, Kamel 6, Jiricek 7, and they pan away. So the NHL Central Scouting quote on Shane Wright, developing into a special player IQ is beyond this year's high-end playmaking NHL release. The high-end playmaking, we haven't been seeing it. We haven't been seeing it, especially in this postseason. The high-end playmaking is reserved for guys on his team like Zayd Wisdom and Jordan Frasca and Ludwinski. So, I don't know. Guys, I don't know what I think about Shane Wright. I'm not going to disparage the kid's entire resume. And I know that in Montreal, you guys are either set on, I would say, think Wright or Cooley, because that's the name that they've been throwing around, or Slafkovsky. But again, if you guys have okay, thank you, Scotty. Lambert and Geeky were the last two. So that's the consensus top 10. My top 10 right now, I'll tell it to you. It's 1 Wright, 2 Kamel, 3 Yurov, 4 Savoy, 5 Cooley, 6 Gauthier, 7 Slafkovsky, 8 Jack Hughes. I know. 9 Lambert and 10 Nemetz. And in case you knew, you haven't been listening to the podcast that I've been doing. That's my like January or December ranking. And I said, I'm not changing it no matter what. And I just want to see how it goes. And so far, so good. I guess the one guy you could look at and say, why the hell is he on there is Jack D. Hughes from Northeastern. But, youngest kid in Division I college hockey. He didn't really get a top-line job. Started off slow, but when you watched him with the NTDP, it was a late birthday. So when he was on the NTDP as a draft -1, he acted and played like a number 1 center. I thought more so than Chaz Lucius. And so that's why I'm a big fan of his game. And he's got really good playmaking abilities, good vision. And his dad's the GM of the Canadiens. So he was pretty high in Central Scouting's midterm, and then they ended up dropping him down from 9 to 26. And I thought that wasn't really justified, but it's their list. All right, here they go. They're walking the plackets out. So this is actually, I like what ESPN's doing now. They're not really messing around. They realize they have a game that's a very important game 5 about to start. They just broke for commercial. So my top 10, I just told you, right? Kamel, Yurov, Savoy, Cooley, Gauthier, Slafkovsky, Hughes, Lambert, and Nemetz. Only 1 defenseman. The next 5 after that, Geeky at 11, a center. Miroshnichenko, we all know about the lymphoma, but I think he's going to be okay. He's a right wing at 12. Paravalov, left wing or right wing, but he's a right shot. He's at 13. Frank Nazer, the playmaking center on the NTDP. He's my 14th guy. And then David Jiricek, or Jiricek, however you want to say it. He's like Nemeth, a right shot. He was playing right now in the Bayer games, whereas Nemeth was playing just some pre-IIHF Men's World Championship tune-up. But to me, it's clear cut that they're the most. Not only are they the most complete and talented defensemen in the draft, but they're also probably the most mature, because they've been playing against men for a couple of years now. They've played in Olympic qualifiers. They've played in the men's league. And although Jiricek got injured at the World Juniors and missed half his season, or most of the second half, frickin' Nemeth was on fire. He was one of the top scoring defensemen in the entire league, the Tipos Extraliga. He had an outstanding postseason, almost like a point a game for a defenseman in a men's league in Europe. So I know it's not the end-all, be-all. I think we all learned our lesson from Capo Caco and how he dominated the SM Liga, how he dominated the Men's World Championship against NHL guys. And we all thought, oh, my God, this kid's going to be a 40-goal scorer. And he might become one. But remember, the narrative was, well, Caco outplayed Hughes at the Men's World Championship, so Caco might end up being the better player from a physical maturity standpoint and just production in I guess, those best-on-best events. And we all know now that looks kind of stupid. And I'm guilty of it, too. This is part of the downside when you're ranking players and trying to assess their potential. You're going to make mistakes. And although I think Caco, with the Rangers, they're loaded at wing. They didn't really need to draft him, but they drafted him anyway because he was a number 2 overall pick. I could see him eventually developing into a big time. I mean, look at Chris Kreider. It took him 10, 12, 13 years after he got drafted to become a 30-goal scorer, let alone a 40 or 50-goal scorer. And so I think maybe with Caco, you probably see him hit that mark a little bit before that. But the point stands with, using men's league play and men's tournament play as a barometer. It's got its pluses and minuses. All right, they're back from the break. They're going over last year's lottery. The only surprise last year was they swapped Seattle and Anaheim. Whereas Seattle was supposed to get 3 and Anaheim was 2, and then they flip-flop. Everybody else was the same, and Owen Power first overall going to Buffalo. So, my rankings, I'll keep going down. I got Lekkerimaki at 16, Osland at 17. That was tough for me to do because I wanted to have Osland ahead of Lekkerimaki, but Lekkerimaki, fantastic. I mean, Osland is fantastic too. And then Mintyakov, Korchinski, 2 defensemen at 18, 19. Gleb Cherkasov at 20. Liam Ogren at 21. And then Ludwinski at 22. Furcus at 23. Karamislov at 24. Mayshaw at 25. Kasper 26. Matichuk 27. Odelius 28. Grudinin 29. Yes, I'm pro Grudinin. Kulich at 30. And then Gauthier at 31. And Duda at 32. So some names missing. Where's Del Belbaluz? Del Belbaluz, I don't know where he is. He's not playing all that well in the playoffs, so maybe he should show up because that's an issue that I've had with him. And some of the guys like, Snuggerud, McGrawdy, Howard, the NTP kids, I pushed them down. Chesley Casey had nothing to do with the U18 Worlds. It's just that I'm more confident with the European kids. So I felt that, Gauthier and Nazar and Cooley's enough for the first round. That's probably not the place. All right, here we go.
Let's get this underway.
Can you guys hear the TV?
The 16th overall selection in the 2022 NHL Draft belongs to...
All right, Vegas at 16, no change.
And this pick will actually transfer to...
So now that goes to Buffalo. There you go.
Part of the Golden Knights trade for Jack Eichel this year.
So Buffalo, you get the 16th pick in the draft via the Jack Eichel trade, and it's going to be you'll get a good player out of it. I think so. It's a deeper draft than last year.
The 15th overall selection in the 2022 NHL Draft belongs to...
Vancouver gets 15, no change. Remember last year they traded away their first-round pick for OEL. And Arizona ended up drafting Dylan Gunther.
Since taking over as the general manager of the Canucks.
I haven't looked high. We're tired.
Overall selection in the 2022 NHL
All right, 14.
belongs to
Winnipeg, no change.
This is the first time the Jets will select with the 14th pick. Last year, they drafted Chaz Lucius.
They drafted Lucius that year, and then before that, Perfetti, before that, Heinola. All right, 13. Islanders, maybe. If there's a delay, I apologize. All right, New York Islanders.
This is the first time since 2019 that the Islanders will have a first-round draft pick. The last time they drafted 13th overall was back in 19.
The last down the first round pick was the kid Holmstrom, the winger out of Sweden. He was okay in the AHL this year.
The 12th overall selection in the 20.
All right, this is supposed to be
belongs to
Columbus. Yep. So no changes, guys.
The Blue Jackets also had the 12th pick in last.
The suspense should be about the Chicago pick. That's where the big suspense is, because if Chicago wins the lottery this year, they get unprotected pick, goes to Columbus, and Columbus could get Mitch Korvamberdod next year.
NHL draft belongs to
All right, Sharks, no change.
And this is the first time since 1994 that the Sharks will select with the 11th overall pick when they selected Jeff Friesen.
Oh, Jeff Friesen, remember him?
Number 10 pick in the 2022 NHL draft belongs to the Anaheim Ducks.
All right, so still no changes, guys.
The Ducks
Anaheim at
have
10.
5 first-round selections over the last 3 years, including Trevor Zegras, who was drafted 9th overall in 2019. This will be Pat Verbeek's.
All right, so in the 9th slot is Buffalo. So if this isn't Buffalo,
Number 9,
they win the lottery.
2022 NHL
Now all these teams are eligible for the first overall, second overall pick. Buffalo.
The Sabres will have multiple picks once again.
So Buffalo, you're picking at 9 and 16 in round 1. Not bad. Now you guys had a really good second half. We'll talk about that in the after the lottery's over.
The number 8 overall.
All right, this is supposed to be Detroit.
NHL draft belongs to.
Yep, there we go. No lottery for you. Sorry, Detroit.
This is only the second time Detroit has had.
Last year they took Edvinson at 6, but they also had Kosa, fantastic goalie prospect. Wings are they're getting there. They'll be there. It's just going to be a while. All right, 7's supposed to be Ottawa. Well, let's see what they say. Ottawa, all right. Ottawa's getting 7. Remember last year they drafted Tyler Boucher, a controversial pick, and he had some issues this year. So Sens fans want a better draft from their GM this year. All right, this is it, guys. This is it. If it's not Chicago, then Columbus gets the unprotected 2023. All right, this goes to Columbus. So it was fun while it lasted. It was fun talking about it. Can you imagine fucking Bowman? Like, that's his legacy. Forget about the scandals that he. Anyway, it's all moot now. All right, 5. This is supposed to be the Devils. Oh, the Devils. The Devils have moved up to 1 or 2, right? Yes. The Devils. The Devils. All right. Sorry. Well, Philly, I mean, still not bad. All right. This is supposed to be all right, Seattle at 4. And now people start putting their mask on at the Seattle bar. What the hell's going on in Seattle? All right.
To the top 3 spots.
Commercial.
There are 3 GMs anxiously awaiting.
All right, so we have New Jersey. We have New Jersey, Arizona, and Montreal. So now here's the thing. They're going to go to commercial. I'm going to put the TV on mute. Here's the thing. The Devils are loaded prospect-wise at every position. And even to a degree, goaltending, if you look at some of the names that they've had and how well they've progressed. The Devils have so many loaded, so many outstanding prospects that they have guys playing out of position. They have like elite scorers and checking roles, and they're still scoring, like whether it be in the AHL or in Europe. I mean, and then on top of that, the Devils already have that outstanding young core with Hughes and Hischier and Mercer. And, you know, if you want to throw Ty Smith in there, and then they get all these other kids, like, I mean, Nikita Kotyuk and Holtz and Zetterlund and Walsh. I mean, I will talk about it. When I was doing my homework on Utica, I mean, I had, it was like 5 pages worth of notes on all those kids because, you know, they got Nolan Foote and they got Ball, big defenseman Kevin Ball. So they have, and then Luke Hughes. You know, how can I forget Luke Hughes? Who will be playing, by the way, at the IHF World Championship for Team USA. And so, you know, what, you know, Devils fans are like, what do you do? You know, to be honest with you, I wouldn't mind if you get first or second overall, freaking trade it. You know what I mean? Like, like trade it. That one pick is going to be worth a lot. You could really get whatever you guys think your team weakness is, you could address that by trading away that number 1 pick. Arizona, different story. You don't want to trade that pick. You guys need to keep rebuilding your prospect pool. You got good years out of, development years out of Barrett Hayton and Soderstrom. You got bounce back years from Clayton Keller. Chikrin had some injury issues. Schmaltz is pretty good. And then you have Gunther, who's a fantastic prospect. And so I think if you consider that like the core, I know I could name a couple other guys as well. But this is a pick that you would keep, whether it be 1 or 2 or 3. Montreal, a little bit of an odd situation because we don't know if you're rebuilding. We don't know if you're not rebuilding. Jeff Gorton has experience in this. Ken Hughes is not because he's a rookie GM. Carey Price's future and his decision will impact, I guess, which direction they go. Do I think the Montreal should trade the pick? Absolutely not. They should definitely make the pick. I don't know if they should pick Shane Wright. And I don't know. I guess, it's more like a gut feeling. But if you guys are leaning towards Wright, then fine. But we're still waiting, by the way. There's still a commercial. Some guy's in a parachute with a camera on his head. And we're just waiting on it. But actually, by the way, good job by ESPN. All right, 8 minutes and 15 seconds until playoff hockey. You know what? I'm going to try to, if you guys want to break for the Carolina Boston game, then you could always, this will be live on the channel. So you could always just tune back in and see my comments on your organization and so on. All right, here we go.
I wish each of you guys a lot of luck. The number 3 overall
Number 3
in the 2022 NHL draft belongs to the Arizona.
All right, Arizona gets it.
This is familiar.
So now it's basically a matter of Montreal, the Devils, getting the first overall pick. So now they'll make the announcement. Don't spoil it, by the way, if you're on the chat, because I might be on a delay. If the Devils win it, that'll be the 3rd time since 2017 that they got the first overall pick. But that has nothing to do with the new rules. All right, here we go.
Belongs to
Montreal gets number 1. Devils get number 2.
means number 2, the New Jersey Devils.
All right, so
Congratulations to the
I don't care what they have to say. All right, so we'll recap. No real change except for the big one being the Devils jumping from 5 to 2. So 1 Montreal, you got the first. This is the official draft order, by the way, for the first round, barring any trades. 1 Montreal, 2 New Jersey, 3 Arizona, 4 Seattle, 5 Philly. So Philly, you guys dropped down 1, and Seattle dropped down 1. And I think they did. Columbus, Chicago didn't win the lottery, so you get their pick at 6. Columbus gets the 6th pick. 7 Ottawa, 8 Detroit, 9 Buffalo, 10 Anaheim, 11 Sharks, 12 Jackets, 13 Islanders, 14 Winnipeg, 15 Vancouver, 16 Vegas. So there's your first round draft order. What we'll do is I'll just give you a quick ranking that I have. So give you an idea of plays that I have and the positions that they play. I know I just went over one, but I'll do it again. So my first ranked kid, my top ranked kid is Shane Wright, center. My number 2 kid is Joachim Kamel out of Finland. He's a right wing. 3, Danila Yurov. He's a left wing, right wing. Could also play center, though, out of Russia. Number 4 is Matthew Savoy, a very fast center from Winnipeg in the WHL. Number 5 is Logan Cooley, the top line center for the NTDP. Number 6 is Cutter Gauthier. I think he's got roots in Arizona. And he was born in Sweden, but raised in Arizona. So I got him at number 6. He could play wing, he could play center. Depends on how they want to develop him. Number 7, Juraj Slafkovsky. That might be pretty low for him, considering what he did in the second half. But they have him listed. I've seen him listed at center, but Slafkovsky's played wing all season at every level. So it's odd that they have him listed as a center. Jack D. Hughes at 8, a center for Northeastern. Brad Lambert, a wing/center at number 9. Simon Nemitz, a right defenseman at 10. Connor Geeky, a center at 11. Ivan Marashchenko, a left wing, right wing at 12. Alexander Paravalov, a left wing, right wing at 13. Frank Nazar at 14, a center. David Jiricek, a right defenseman at 15. Jonathan Lekkerimaki, a right wing at 16. Noah Ostlund, a center. Lekkerimaki center at 17. Pavel Mintyakov out of the OHL. Saginaw, he's a left defenseman. Kevin Korchinski, a left defenseman from Seattle in the WHL. I think they're both left defensemen. I keep forgetting. Gleb Cherkasov is a wing out of Russia at 20. And then Liam Ogren, another wing at 21. Paul Ludwinski, a center wing at 22, plays for Kingston. Jagger Furcus, a wing. I think he's listed as a left wing, but he's got center traits at 23. Arseny Karamazov at 24, a left defenseman out of SKA 1946. At number 25, a right wing, Philip Mashar out of Slovakia, plays for Poprad. 26, the Austrian center who played for Rogla, Marco Kasper. Detan Matejchuk from the WHL is a left defenseman. Kallio Delius, a left defenseman at 28 out of Sweden. Vladimir Grudinin, a left defenseman at 29 for Krasnaya Armia in the MHL. Yuri Kulich, a right wing at number 30 in the Czech League. And then Nathan Gaucher, a big power center, 31. Plays for the Quebec Remparts. And at 32, a very underrated defenseman, Artem Duda, left shot, plays for Krasnaya Armia. So if I made a mistake of what hand they are, left or right shot, I apologize. So that's my ranking. So now what we'll do is we'll go, that's my top 32 rank. There's more, but we'll get into that later on. So what we'll do is we'll go team by team, and I'll give you my thoughts on them. I got notes all over the place. So I don't know if you guys are still involved, but again, remember, you want to go watch the game, you could always come back and watch this later. So let's talk about Montreal real quick. The season of change, really, ever since, if you really think about it, the high water mark of that organization in recent times, and specifically under that leadership group, the leadership group that had Bergevin as GM, Timmins as scouting director, and Ducharme as the head coach. The high water mark was really the making the Stanley Cup final last year. And although they ended up losing to Tampa, no shame in that, it was pretty obvious that that was a great feel-good story. That people in Montreal, like, they weren't booing, they were cheering, they were happy. Yeah, that they didn't have a great regular season, but you beat the Leafs after being down 3-1. You smoke the Jets, right, in round 2. You beat Vegas. That was the big shock for me, was when they beat Vegas. And they got Subban in the studio. They got Subban, Arda Okal, and Chelios in the studio. You kind of knew this was what they would do with Subban. He's a terrible player, but I always felt that with his personality, he'd be, his public personality outside the locker room, that he'd be okay for TV and people would get into it. It's going to be interesting to see his takes because, a real dirty player, massive regression. A lot of teammates didn't like him. He's had that kind of reputation. So I'm curious to see how he does on TV, but these guys on TV, they don't really know much about the prospects. So they're probably just saying canned answers. But anyway, back to the Canadians. It was such a feel-good story, and then it all started going to shit little by little, right? It started going to shit with Carey Price. Well, I don't know what came first, but if you want to really say with the drafting of Logan Mailloux, the defenseman, after he was busted with some doing some perverted stuff with a girl in Sweden, taking pictures of her, and then the whole thing with Carey Price, he has to quit the team because he's got substance abuse problems. And then, so this was like, now the Canadians fans are like, what the hell, man? Like, really? Like this is horrible timing. We're supposed to be a fun, enjoyable off season. And in the end, it turned to shit. And then you start the season, maybe they could, they made some moves at the Kakaniemi offer sheet mess with Carolina. So they had a lot of problems. It was bad news. They played like shit to start the season. Obviously, they didn't have Carey Price. They tried to bring in some people. Petrie was terrible. The fans hated him. And within a matter of a few weeks, the Canadians were the worst team in the league. And they stayed that way throughout the entire season. We'll give or take a couple of times where they were swapping with either Arizona or Seattle, whoever was. But it was just a nightmare of a season. They fired the coach Ducharme. They brought in Marty St. Louis. They fired the GM Bergevin, who's been there for a while. They brought in Ken Hughes. They fired Timmins. I don't know who the scouting director is now. I guess I should have looked it up. And now but the big thing is they got Jeff Gorton involved from the Rangers. He's going to be like the VP or the president of hockey operations. And he's got a pretty good track record from his days in Boston and in the Rangers, kind of helping rebuild those franchises into contenders. So I think the Habs are on the right track, but again, we don't know. Now, like I said in the podcast yesterday, your 2022 draft class, even if you want to consider Mayu, I mean, he's a good prospect because I liked him before I found out all the stuff that he did. But it's all those centers that had really good seasons. Riley Kidney. It was really a not just that, they got some productive seasons out of some kids in the AHL as well. You get Jesse Ylonen, Jordan Harris made the team. You got a really good season or second half season out of Cole Caulfield. When you look at that defense, what they're building with Romanov and Mayu and Norlander and Harris and Struble. I'm probably forgetting a couple of guys, but it looks like they're okay. I was disappointed in the way that some of their prospects produce. I was very high on a lot of their drafts. I remember Joni Ikonen and who was the defenseman, Noah Juleson, and even Paling to a degree. After that hat trick, we're like, all right, he's going to be the future second line or third line center. It's been a big problem. You also got a good year out of Blake Biondi. With Blake Biondi and Jack Smith, I like them both. I was high on them both. And just the way things work out, Jack Smith isn't really panning out, at least thus far, in college, whereas Blake Biondi, Hermantown, I was a big fan of his. Some people knocked his skating or whatever, but I saw the kid compete really hard, and he looked pretty good. And so, Ray Ferraro was doing this game. It's staying on mute. I think that if you're a Canadiens fan, you're happy with the way a lot of your kids are progressing. I like Dvorak. Obviously, Suzuki's there. The big question mark is going to be in goal. And so, Caden Primo, we're big fans of his. He hasn't really been dominant in the AHL. He's played in the NHL before, so he's got a little bit of a taste there. But it looks like the Habs are going to, especially with Gorton understanding how big of a deal it was to get Shesterkin and how he helped change the Rangers franchise around just in a matter of a couple of years. And of course, with Price being the best goalie the franchise had since Patrick Waugh. Well, if you want to say Theodore, because he did win the Hart, but still, goaltending is a big deal with the Canadiens. So I think that's going to be the main focus during the offseason. And if Carey Price decides to come back, hey, that's good. That's a good thing. You have a goalie who's known to steal series. He's been known to carry a team. We don't, no pun intended. We don't know what kind of shape he's in. We don't know. I know that didn't he play like the last game of the season? Well, at least I thought I saw he played. So with Paling getting some NHL experience, so more NHL experience, Ylonen getting a look, with Harris getting a look, Romanov played a full season, or at least close to it. I think we're going to start seeing. I think Harvey Pinard, right? He's another kid that looked okay in the minor leagues. Laval has a lot of Frenchmen, and I think that's kind of cool because that's the Canadian identity. The French Canadian identity is I want to see Montreal and I want to see Laval have a lot of French Canadians. And so it's good when I watch Laval, I see all these French types. It's tradition. It's the way I like it. But I don't know what that's going to translate to NHL success. And again, the other thing with the Canadiens is you got to worry about the rest of the division and all the other teams who are rebuilding. Some teams have been rebuilding well before you started your rebuild. So I don't know if we're going to get a letter from Gorton and Hughes saying, "Dear fans, please be patient with us," like with the Rangers, although that was around the deadline. But it's interesting to see. It's interesting to wait and see how it plays out. As far as the draft is concerned, the Devils, when they had the number 1 overall pick for Jack, the Jack Hughes Capo Caco year, we were saying, well, maybe draft Capo Caco because you already have, Pavel Zacha as its center, and you already have Nico Hischier as your franchise center. So you're going to draft another third franchise center? And that was like, yeah, we're going to draft another franchise center, and pretty smart decision. So in that regard, even though that you guys are having all these centers having really good seasons, specifically the kids from last year's draft class, you got to draft the kid that you have number 1 on your board, whether it be a center like Wright or Cooley. You want the big-bodied kid like Gauthier does play like a center, and maybe even Slavkovsky. If you say Slavkovsky could be a center, he's a big kid. He's got soft hands. He's a playmaker. then hell, why not? You draft the kid and you groom him at center ice, and I think it would be a good decision. What I wouldn't do is just think outside the box with this. You know what I mean? And say, well, we're kind of rough on defense, so we need no, don't do that. Don't do that. If you're looking at a pure sniper or an excitable kind of a guy, then I think Savoy fits that. I guess one thing that we have to keep an eye on with all the other teams as well, not just the Canadians, is the Russian factor. How Central Scouting, they're mad at Russia, and so they knocked all the Russian kids down, even though these top Russian kids had fantastic second halves and playoff series. I don't know where that factors in. You know, some teams like the Rangers and the Devils, they'll draft Russian. Colorado, they'll draft Russian kids. I don't think they'll really care. Can you imagine if like Marashchenko drops to the Avalanche or Cherkasov? Because people are like, oh, Russia, we're mad at them. And don't get me started on that. But yeah, I think you guys understand that clearly with the moves being made by Central Scouting and the CHL banning Russians from the import draft and CCM, a Canadian company, banning or taking Ovechkin off their thing. Like, this is a Canadian-based, if you want to call it xenophobia, based on, you want to call it a war, call it a conflict, whatever you want to believe, it still doesn't really make it right. So, but again, it's something that you have to think about as a fan, that if you really like Russian prospects, if your team doesn't draft them, a question to ask is, well, did you not draft them because they weren't high on your board? Or did you not draft them because they were not high on your board because they were Russian and you locked them down and you worried about the optics or the PR, issue? Like, oh, we're drafting Russians, they're mean. Like, dude, like freaking Perevalov's dad isn't like a tank gunner in the Ukraine. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just stupid. But it is what it is. So that's the Canadian situation. Let's move on and talk a little bit about Arizona. If you will follow me on Twitter, if you hear my podcast, I'm a little protective of Arizona, not because they're American, but I like to see, I like the underdog, and I know what I don't like is the fact that they get a lot of shit because the fact that they used to be the Winnipeg Jets and they were yanked from Winnipeg and put into Arizona. So the narrative has always been the evil, bad Arizona Coyotes who used to be the Jets, and they robbed Winnipeg of a franchise. And so it's almost like people are happy. A lot of hockey fans are happy that Arizona struggles and that they haven't made the playoffs, and they have that one run in 2012 is really the high water mark of their franchise since moving to the desert, moving to the desert from Winnipeg back in 95, 96. But, the issue with Arizona, one of the reasons why it was easy to kind of root against them and why they were really a dysfunctional franchise was that they always tried to get, no matter who was there, who was the GM, who was the coach, they always tried to acquire veteran talent. Where if they had high draft picks, they decided to either trade them or, they would keep them buried in a depth role because they wanted to go out and get a big name or just veteran type. So always very busy at the deadline, always very busy in unrestricted free agency, getting guys. By the way, I got the Hurricanes game on right now, so I'll give you like little updates. And so, that has never really worked. And because of that desire to I think it was kind of like a vicious cycle where the management was like, we need people in the seats. Go get veteran players. Don't worry about the draft. And they go out and they get veteran players, but they got the wrong veteran players, and the team stunk, and they got more draft picks and they weren't drawing. So like, hey, we need to put asses in seats, trade the prospects, get veterans, and on and on and on. This was the process in the desert with the Coyotes. And once I guess it was a little bit of a blessing. Like, if you want to talk about the low point for the franchise, it was really 2020. Maybe, 2020, I think maybe into 2021, where the GM Chaika got caught with the illegal combines. I know I make a joke about that, but that was serious stuff. Massive violation. Then after that, they had the reports of like a toxic workplace environment. I mean, what freaking workplace environment isn't toxic? But they owe their money on their bills. Like, that's so stupid. And then the drafting of Mitchell Miller, who was involved in like a really bad racism. They abused a disabled kid horrible, real bullying. And he was like, I think 14 at the time. So he wasn't like that young, but it's still, he was a kid. So and then, then you have the issue with the arena and getting a new arena and the lease at the Gila River. So it was just a bad time. And it seems like they brought in Bill Armstrong, they brought in new blood, and they said, you know what, like let's just rebuild from the ground floor up. And who cares about veterans? Remember the other thing about Arizona was that they were always the team that would acquire the bad contracts, right? Because they had to reach the cap floor, so they'd always get like bad contracts. Was it Ladd or Datsuk? And so they're going to stop doing that. And not only do they have a zillion picks for this upcoming draft, but it looks like the intent, and again, this is my speculation, is to build through the draft, build a solid core, I guess if you want to say, I don't want to say tank, but just be hovering in the area where they could have a strong chance of drafting one of Mitch Korver, Bedard next year. And then when that's all said and done, you could maybe hope that Austin Matthews doesn't extend in Toronto. And we all know the history with Austin Matthews in Arizona, and then he's going to go there and help things out. As far as their prospects, it's obviously like, it's a working process. We're basically on like year 2 of a rebuild, if you want to call it that. Hayton and Soderstrom is still pretty good prospects. They were able to play some games this year. Hayton, I think, more so than Soderstrom. But remember back in 2020, they got punished with the picks. They had to lose picks as punishment. And so the Mitchell Miller pick was their highest, and I actually liked the pick at the time. I didn't realize that he had this bad history. I guess shame on me as a draft analyst that I didn't know that he was involved in the criminal stuff. But so you lost him. You had to renounce his rights. So now the highest pick you had from 2020 is a 5th round pick, Carson Bentley, the big kid. And so really, like last year when they made the trade, when they traded OEL and Connor Garland too, that was the beginning of a rebuild. So this is year 2 of a rebuild. They got a lot of picks in the first round, 4 second-round picks. I went over all this in the podcast yesterday. If you guys want to hear it, the Draft Analyst podcast, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify. So that's the situation with Arizona. I would not, I would not hang my hat if you're a Yotes fan on Austin Matthews, though. Like, you know what? Do what Toronto did, where you get top 5 pick after top 5 pick after top 5 pick. You build that way, and then maybe you get an Austin Matthews of your own, like a Connor Bedard or a Mitch Korver or whomever. All right, let's move on. I didn't talk about Tucson. Tucson was kind of like mediocre this year. You saw a lot of kids promoted. The 2 big names that you should be happy with promotion-wise, at least from a defensive standpoint, was Dyson Mayo, who was a pretty strong and Kyle Capobianco, but he spent, I think, most of the season in Arizona this year. The Finnish kid, the Finnish Italian kid, Michelli. There are kids coming. They're coming. We just got to wait. And I wouldn't look into the Tucson Roadrunners record too much. But again, when you rebuild the NHL team, you got to rebuild the farm system as well. And I think that's what's going to happen. So nucleus is pretty strong in Arizona. You have to figure by next year, you're looking at if they keep Chychrun. I don't care what Chychrun says. I say, we are not trading you. You know what I mean? Quality of life in Arizona is very high. I think Chychrun's issue is he wants to win. And he realizes that he's getting, he's almost 24 now or 25. He's a 98, so I think he's 24. But you got to do whatever it takes to convince him to stay. Unless somehow, let's say Soderstrom develops into this franchise number 1 defenseman, which is what you were hoping you'd get out of him when you drafted him back in 2019. But, stay the course. You know what I mean? All right. So Seattle, you guys have like no farm system. Okay. And I always make the joke. Luke Hemming was your original farm system. Just like one kid. And now that you've added, I wasn't a big fan of the draft last year. Some of the kids you picked, I like Winterton. He had a good season this year. Obviously Matt Beniers What did he have? Like 5 points in his first 5 games. Oh, big save there by looks like Kochakov, I guess. Still nothing, by the way, Boston, Carolina. But really, when you have True and Henman and Cole Lind as like some of your better prospects, you got a lot of work to do. So this is going to be a long-term rebuild for Seattle. I don't know how much longer that's going to last because of the market. It's a new team, and eventually it's going to wear off. I know that. What do people from Seattle call it? Are they called Seattleites or Seattlers or Seattleans? Well, I know Washingtonians. Let's say Washingtonians. So Washingtonians in that part of the state will lose patience with the rebuild, and it's a very expensive arena. Everything is expensive there when you go, and apparently they say it's a beautiful arena, climate change arena, fine. Well, pledging to clean up the climate arena. What do they do with the garbage though? Here's the funny thing: is like they're like, oh, we're not going to use plastic. I call bullshit on that. Like, what do you do with the garbage after every game? What do you use? Cloth, burlap, hemp? So it's interesting to see how you could brief one thing, but one of these days I'm going to go to Seattle. I want to go to Seattle for a bunch of reasons. Number one, I want to go there because I'm a big, sludge, grudge, alternative music fan, and I want to see all the places, all the bars that I used to play in, the bands I like, Melvins and Nirvana and them. And then I want to seafood, right? Another good reason to go. And I want to, see the arena. And I want to see if what they say is true, if it's really is a beautiful, but nonetheless, they have a lot of work to do with the prospect pool. Unlike last year, where they only had a couple of picks, Cron, the scouting director, and Francis, the GM, they have a lot of picks this year. I left all my notes at home, but they have a lot of picks. So they believe they have Toronto's first round pick from the Giordano trade. Or is it a second? I forgot. But I know that they have at least like 10 or 11 picks this year. So that's a good start for rebuilding the franchise. As far as the team goes, I like some of your players. I think the one disappointment, and we talked about this in the season preview, 2-on-1, toe drag, save, big save. Big save, 2-on-1 Boston, big save for Carolina. So it's still nothing. 5 minutes into the first. Oh, it's Ranta's in goal. Ranta's in goal, not Kochakov. So big save by Ranta. But anyway, when you have Jordan Eberle and Yanni Gord, Vince Dunn, there's some pretty good players there. So, but again, the key thing is to rebuild the farm, or just build the farm system because you didn't have one to start with. So maybe the next expansion team should probably follow the Vegas model. And right off the bat, your first year, I want to have a lot of first round picks. I want to do these drug deals or these backroom deals, because if you stockpile first round picks and second round picks like Vegas did in 2017, Glass, Suzuki, and the Glass thing didn't work out, but Suzuki turned into Pacioretty, and Brandstrom almost 1-for-1 turned into Stone. So now they were able to do that because they drafted a really good centers and forwards in the other rounds. Morozov and Jack Dugan and other kids too. So I don't know if I'm Seattle, like last year, I think they're doing the right thing. They realize we need a lot of draft / prospect capital if we want to shorten the length of time it takes to get from the basement to the bubble. And remember that Pacific Division is wide open. The Western Conference is pretty open outside of like 4 playoff spots in the West should be up for grabs next season. All right, let's move on to number 4. Well, I know it was not the draft order. I'm talking about like the original order of like where they finished. Talk about Philadelphia. All right, so the Flyers are a mess. It's really bad. And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Ranger fan. I want to talk to you about Flyers. You see all the podcasts I've been on and with Yariv. Like I'm pro Flyer in a way, not in terms like I want them at the NHL level to win, but they've had so many strong drafts, in my opinion, based on the kids that I ranked. They would draft the kids that I ranked. And I watched, it snuck in, bad goal. 1-0 Carolina. Bad goal, Swayman. It was a off-wing wrist shot from the right circle that snuck in. So you talk about on one end, the Bruins had a 2-on-1, a slave, and it looks like he crept in. Anyway, so Philadelphia, I watched a lot of Lehigh Valley this year. The reason why is I started watching them before the season went to shit. And basically their entire farm system in the AHL, they're mostly, it's a bad goal. He was going for the long side blocker and went off, and I don't know if it might have Svechnikov in front, but bad goal. So 1-0 Carolina. But I wanted to catch up on the German Rubtsovs and the Wade Allisons and the Wyatt Wileys, and then the goalies, Ostamenko and the Sandstrom, so Zamula. I mean, I'm looking at my notes here. Like, listen, this is a lot of stuff that I got on the fly. Is Zamula, Cam York, Isaac Ratcliffe, Mason Millman, Linus Hogberg, Cooper Zech, Matt Strome, the two Cates, the Cateses, Noah Cates and Jackson Cates, Shushko, Lashinsky, just prospects all over the place, and they're still in the AHL. And so I wanted to get a feel on what was going on down there. And I think the problem that the Flyers had was when all the veterans that they acquired weren't producing, or they were hurt. When the kids were being called up, it wasn't like a seamless transition. And they traded away Nolan Patrick. They moved on from him. He was involved in the Ryan Ellis deal, but Ryan Ellis was hurt. So you expected him to be your number one and number two defenseman. I think the defense core completely collapsed. Provorov had a bad year. He was pretty ornery at the press conference. You could tell that Provorov is like, I mean, he didn't have a good season. And, you got rid of Gostisbehere. He went to Arizona. So, Cam York was promising. Ronnie Addard is promising. You got him after the college tournament there. But you look at last year's draft, you trade away your top 10 pick for Ristolainen. He clearly wasn't a difference maker. And then you extend the guy. Why did Fletcher do that? Well, there's no way. How is he going to justify that? How's he going to justify to the fans? Like, yeah, we traded away a first-round pick to Buffalo, and I wasn't a top 10 pick. I think it was like 14th overall. From Kelly, do I think coaching is an issue, Lehigh Valley? Oh, that's a good question, actually. We're talking Flyers. Let's talk Flyers. LePerrier is a no shit, no nonsense kind of a coach. And so, there's no leadership. Coaching is an art. It's not a science. So it's not like if there was a science, everyone would follow the same formula and it would work. My interpretation is that, and I'll talk about this with Yariv this week on the Nitty Gritty podcast, is that he was probably brought in because Fletcher and maybe some other people in the front office weren't happy with the way their prospects were developing. Maybe they felt they were getting hurt too much. Maybe they felt they were too soft, and that they needed some tough love. This is my speculation now. I can't prove this, but this is just my speculation. So they're bringing a guy like LePerrier, and LePerrier's been an assistant coach at NHL level. He was a really tough player in the NHL. When he played for the Blues, he played for the Kings, he played for the Flyers. He was actually a Ranger for a little bit too. His career took off after he left for the Rangers. Go figure. But yeah, he was in that big trade with Ferraro and for Yari Curry at the 96 deadline. But anyway, back to the coaching. So he's a tough, abrasive guy. He's got scars all over his face. Like he was always a tough customer. And I could speak on from experience that if you're a Gen X kind of a guy like myself, you either were raised really tough or you were raised kind of tough. And if it wasn't tough in your house, it was tough on the street or tough at school, which is a different time, right? We didn't have all these, and we'll say better or worse, it's up for debate. But, to consider that Gen X was actually a tougher generation. Oh, beautiful save on Martian in front, still 1-0. That if you, and I'm talking about millennials versus Gen X. So LePerrier is Gen X. Most of the players on the Flyers are millennials. It's true. You have to, you cannot rule with an iron fist with millennials. It's a different breed. I'm not making this up. There's a hysterical YouTube video about the millennial job interview. Go see it. Again, you guys have your pluses and your minuses, just like my generation. We had our pluses and minuses. So I learned, in the military that, all the combat experience you have, all the tough things that you accomplished, that you can't teach that, you can't pass that down. And another example, I know I've used this before, was Nolan Ryan when he took over the Texas Rangers. He said, no more this coddling, no more these pitch counts. We're going to have the toughest, most durable pitches like the olden days when I pitched and Steve Carlton pitched. They're going to throw 160 pitches a game. And he said it was going to be organization wide. And the kids ended up all having Tommy John surgery, and they had to do away with it. So I think LePerrier, back on topic, but with LePerrier, he is a very abrasive, coach. It's tough love. And the one thing I noticed about him is when people would ask him questions about specific players, like, hey, how do you think about this guy, how well he's been playing, like in the pregame show? The announcer, he does play-by-play. He's like, hey, this guy, he's got 5 points in 5 games. He's like, hey, what do you think about, let's say, Tanner Lashinsky? He's got 5 points in 5 games. And LePerrier, almost every time, he would be like, well, yeah, he's got 5 points in 5 games, but he still needs a lot of to improve in a lot of areas. I'm like, all right, at some point, and I have daughters too, so I'm like this. Like you can't always criticize and beat down and marginalize accomplishments. You have to say good things. So to answer your question, to sum it all up, did we see results from Lehigh Valley this year? I wouldn't say, not necessarily. They were kind of like near the bottom, and they had a lot of inconsistent play from various prospects. But, I would give them another year. The key thing, though, is you want to see, are they showing up to Philly tougher, better players? And if LePerrier is the reason for that, you keep them. So hopefully that answers that. But they have some good, like I said, Cam York, Zamula, very good defense prospects. They're going to get a whole bunch of guys. Zayd Wisdom is a kid that he was at Lehigh Valley last year because of the shutdown and the OHL shutdown, and he was fantastic. Same thing with Tyson Forster. And then they had to go back to the OHL. And I'm watching Kingston because Shane Wright, and Wisdom's always one of the best players on the ice. And he used to play on that line with Chromiak and Wright, and then they broke up the lines. And no matter what line Zayd Wisdom went to, he was fantastic. And, of course, you got other prospects like Emil Andrea. Connor McLennan is having a fantastic postseason for Winnipeg. The kid Desnoyers is very good. So the pipeline, you have a whole bunch of kids on the way up. Now, as far as the draft goes, I know I kind of skipped over that with the other team, so I apologize. I think I said a little bit with Montreal. As far as Arizona goes, it doesn't really matter who you pick. Maybe Gauthier would make sense because he's got local ties. And then the Seattle, you drafted a lot of centers last year. Maybe you go for defense. So you want to draft a guy like Jiricek or Nemetz high with the 3rd overall pick. I wouldn't be against that, although it goes against my ranking. With the Flyers, well, there's no goalie this year, and that's first round eligible or first round worthy or capable. So then you have to worry about that. Remember last year we were talking about them getting either Wilson or Kosa, and instead they ended up trading the pick. When I look at the Flyers, you look at Morgan Frost and his development. You look at Joel Farabee and his development. I think the Flyers could use and not like in a Kevin Hayes kind of way. They could use a really big, strong, menacing, Broad Street bully kind of a center. Now, you want pure skill, pure playmaking. All right, you'll get that with Wright. You'll get that with Savoy. You'll get that with Cooley. But maybe, Slavkovsky is not a menacing, angry kind of a young man. There are guys in this draft who are like that. Geeky offers you size, but he's not menacing, although he is engaged. He's physical. Same thing with Slavkovsky. They're physical, they're engaged, but they're not like bounce about, guys are bouncing off them. I mean, all along the boards, maybe. So maybe you're looking at a Geeky or a Slavkovsky as a center iceman, maybe Gauthier if that's what you're looking for. But Savoy on a line with McLennan. Yeah, it was Owen Peterson. I think it's Owen Peterson, Savoy, McLennan, and then it's Geeky. I forgot the my Winnipeg. They have the Benson kid too is pretty good too, but I haven't watched any of Winnipeg's playoff games because I'm waiting for the Memorial Cup. I want to see if they get. Well, I'm going to watch if they get to the final, the WHF final. I'm going to watch that. I want to see if they get to the Memorial Cup. So I can't really talk about Winnipeg's postseason to answer your question. So that's what I'm thinking for the Flyers. But defense wise, you guys, you have some pretty good prospects already, and when you have guys like York and Zamula and Adder, those are two-way defensemen. Those are offensive guys who can put up points. Maybe more so Adder and York than the and remember you got Ellis. He's going to be there for a little bit too. It looks like Carolina is sieging Boston right now. They had a power play. So that's the story with the Flyers. All right, let's move on to the Devils. I already said that you guys have the number 2 prospect pool in the league. If you want to behind LA, and I don't think you guys could argue against that. LA really just it's out of control with the amount of prospects they have, specifically at center ice. And I mean, they played so many kids from their Ontario farm affiliate played in the playoff series right now against the Kings. I mean, the Oilers, Spence, Dursey, the Kaliev, Byfield. They're all up. And then they have this is a loaded pipeline as well. So with the Devils, like I said, you guys are frustrated. You want to make the playoffs. You're sick and tired of seeing the Rangers. They've made it and you guys didn't. I get it. I'd be frustrated too, but I would lean more towards trading it. If they don't trade it though, obviously it takes 2 to tango. If they don't trade the pick, considering what you've gotten out of let's say Ty Smith, what you've gotten out of Dawson Mercer, what you're getting out of Hughes, you're getting out of Hisha, you got Jesper Bratt, Sharon Govich, you brought up a Katyuk. I think he even got his name on the score sheet. And the list goes on and on and on. You're getting rid of PK Subban finally. He was just a mess. Yeah, you really could not defend the way he played. He was so bad 5 years ago. I understand why the ownership wanted to get him. You want to see more stability and consistency in goal. That's always been a problem. Severson, he's going to go to the World Championships playing for the Team Canada, I think. But the defense, you brought in Ryan Graves as well. So, when you have such a young team, a youngest team in the league, it's going to impact the way the veterans play. And so maybe you guys are tired of Zaka. Maybe you guys are tired of Severson. You got Luke Hughes last year. You saw how well he played for Michigan. Don't worry about the Frozen Four. That game when they ended up losing to Denver. I mean, he's a really good, he's a star prospect, and you're probably going to see him turn heads at the World Championships for Team USA. So I guess it would make sense. Listen, if we want, I don't want to talk about need. So let's just go for best player available. And you guys have the 2nd overall pick. So you're going to end up with one of Shane Wright or Joachim Kamel or Logan Cooley or Uri Slafkovsky. I think that if Montreal just goes with the consensus and they take Wright, you got to get the big wing. I don't think you guys really have a Slafkovsky type. And not only is he a scoring wing, he's a playmaking wing. So you don't want to get too cute and smartest guy in the room type hit where you're going to go after Gauthier at 2nd overall or Marash-Dichenko or go for the defenseman Nemetz or no. To me, now, even though I have Kamel, I love Kamel, man. Kamel is a fantastic prospect. And you have to factor in the physicality and the way he hits people and just drilling people all over the place and how he's a man. He's a young kid, but he's a man. He plays like a man. And if the Devils if scouts are like, hey, you know what, we could use that kind of oomph in our lineup. And oh, by the way, he has this elite skill. Then that would be an option. But in terms of polished, and I know that Kamel was fantastic in the SM Liga, right? The men's league. He was one of the top scorers, goal scorers, and point producers until he got hurt, which is very rare for a young kid. And at the U18 Worlds, you saw flashes of why he's considered a top 5 pick, and I have him ranked number 2. But I think if Wright goes number 1, to me, based on everything the Devils have, you could afford to let who's picking after you? Seattle, all right, they're another conference. But then you have a Philly, so you got to worry about if you really love Logan Cooley, he might fall down to Philly. You know what I'm saying? So, I'll go on the hockey's future. I'm sure you guys are really excited right now. But you guys definitely have a lot. Imagine if you guys draft Jack D. Hughes, though. You guys would be bad about the number 2 overall, but still. Or if you trade down maybe for a quality NHL player And Jack D. Hughes is around at like 20-something. Oh, 2-0, Carolina. Tony DeAngelo, look at that. So how funny is that Tony DeAngelo is playing a role in helping Carolina, hold an advantage over Boston. The Rangers let him go for nothing. And the guy that they kept, Georgiev, is the reason why the Rangers lost game 3. And so it's just how it works. I mean, all the Carolina fans that said, I'm not going to get season tickets anymore. Listen, I don't agree with a lot of stuff Tony DeAngelo says. I don't agree with him politically, completely at least. And I don't like his some of the things that he says. And but that's he's right to that. But one of the top offensive defensemen in the NHL. That's it. That's all you got to say. All right, one off the subject. All right, so we talked enough about the Devils. Let's move on and talk about the Jackets. Well, the Blackhawks at 6. I'll talk about you, and then I'll move on to the Jackets. Blackhawks. Your Rockford team is very good. Some of your recent first-round picks, if you want to go back, if you want to look at the Yoki Haru for Alex Needley in the trade, Yoki Haru is a regular defenseman for the Sabres, albeit it's the Sabres. And Alex Needley, he's got health issues, and he's been up and down in the AHL. He definitely hasn't been much of a player in the NHL. I think he played a little bit in each of the last couple seasons. Last year, you made a very controversial pick by taking Nolan Allen, a defenseman, late in round 1, and when you really could have used some offensive help. But when you look at Rockford, Christian Reichel is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And I had the Rockford file. I had the Rockford file somewhere. I don't know what I did with it. But you go down the list of their guys down there, the defensemen. Now, I'll just look at their draft history. I'll tell you the guys that were in Rockford, how I think. Now, Ethan Del Mastro, a very good season for Mississauga, and he actually looked pretty good in the playoff game I watched the other night against Hamilton. Wasn't the biggest fan of his because I felt he was overrated because of the UAT World Championships. But 4th round pick, that's where he deserved to go. He's pretty good. But if you look at the 2017, 18, 19, 20 drafts, Comesso is a potential number 1 goalie. Wyatt Kaiser's a stud. But then, Isaac Phillips was, I believe, on Rockford's top pairing with Ian Mitchell. Now, Ian Mitchell, okay, some of you guys we either overrated him or you disappointed in his play. You had Kalnick, right? I believe he was the Flyer kid, and then he went to Chicago, and I think he's still down there. I feel bad because all my Chicago knows was somewhere. But and Louis Crevier is another kid who had the big, huge mammoth kid, 6'7" kid. The one kid who was very disappointing in Rockford this year was Baudin, and disappointing that he does not like contact. He didn't want to get hit. Nonchalant, lackadaisical, call it whatever you'd like. He was not impressive. Whereas Isaac Phillips, Kalnick, even Ian Mitchell, like they seem like they were the guys running the show on defense. And I like the guy Mike Hardman. He's the kid that got out of Boston College. He's been pretty good for the Ice Hogs. You got some guys that have been down there for a long time. Who is it? Olta Balmakian is still down there. But as far as the draft goes, listen, you're not going to have that pick this year. You're probably not done dealing, but expect Davidson to be busy. But I think with Reichel and some of the other Evan Barrett, that you guys have a pretty decent nucleus. I wouldn't call it like a top 10 farm system, but I like what I saw from a lot of guys down in Rockford, just the one exception being Baudin. As far as Kirby Dach goes, obviously Patrick Kane, you're not moving on from him, but with Kirby Dach, you want to see him take the next step forward. I thought he was great a couple of years ago. He got hurt. Things slowed down a bit. And you're seeing signs of it. You got a great bounce back season out of Dylan Strome. So maybe he's got a future with the organization as a top 6 center, but clearly it looks like the Blackhawks are in need of an infusion of youth and talent, and you're getting there, right? I think Reichel is going to be a guy you'll see in a full-time job next season. All right, Ottawa, the prospect pool for all the picks you guys have had, Well, actually, we'll talk about the Jackets. So the Jackets, we all know about their draft last year with Kournianos and Kent Johnson, and then this year with the they don't have a lot of picks, but you know, they're going to get 2 first-round picks. And they're going to be pretty high because they're European. With Kikalainen, his you know, with Chitakov and Sillinger, you got great years out of them. I'm sorry, it was Kent Johnson. I forgot, was Kournianos? Hold on a second. Why am I forgetting? If Kournianos is look at Blue Jackets. Hold on. Yeah. Kent Johnson, Kournianos, and then Sillinger was your first round last year, and a home run for all 3. You know, Kournianos, I wasn't that high on, but he had a really good season. And obviously, Kent Johnson's Kent Johnson, and Sillinger. Remember to talk about his skating or whatever. It's obvious that you're adding all the prospects that they're going to get now, 2 more first-round picks. They have a really good young nucleus, right? It's just, and they weren't that bad this year. They were actually like, there was a point where like, wait a minute, if they, let's say, win X amount of games, they might actually sneak into that 8th spot. And so, you know, Lawson, it was his first year, right? Where, you know, you had your ups and downs. You had that bad stretch in the middle of the season. But, well, you know, Line A and Texier and Gavrikov and Bjorkstrand, and now you got the young kids. Voracek, I don't know what his deal is. And again, this is kind of like I haven't really done my no shit analysis and assessment of the franchises yet, because I'm in the middle of doing my draft report, and I always do the team stuff at the end. I do my prospect profiles first, and the kids eligible. So I apologize for that. By the time I do my draft preview, by the time I release the draft guide and do my draft preview on the podcast, I will know everything about that fucking organization. I'm sorry for cursing. Ring the bell. But still, so now, which way are you leaning? Like, well, listen, you lost Seth Jones. He was supposed to be there forever. He's not. Werenski will be there forever. I would not mind at all. I mean, just hear me out here. I know that I've said that you could find elite defensemen later on in the 2nd round or in the 3rd round, and we already know the names, right? Letang, Yossi, keep going on and on. But hypothetically, at 6 and 12, if Kikalainen, and they're both on the board, goes Nemeth and Jiricek. But again, those are right shot defensemen. They got the righty in Kournianos last year. They have a really good left defenseman in Nasko, the Slovak kid who played in Finland. And then on top of that, they have the Russian kids who are about to come, Voronkov and the Kirill Marchenko. You know, Foodie, we're still kind of waiting on him. And then, of course, goaltending, you're a little bit disappointed this year with, was it Korpisalo? So you want to bounce back here from Merzlikins. You got is it Tarasov? In Cleveland, in the minor league system. Cleveland didn't have a lot of impressive kids this year. The one kid I did like was Tyler Angle, the center, waterbug, a quick playmaker. And I think he's only like a 2000 born. So he's not that old, maybe 22 or 23. But, you know, if the Blue Jackets ice the same lineup they did this year, and these kids are now a year older wiser, now you have to, sophomore slump is always possible for a guy like Sillinger or, well, Gavrikov. It's not like Gavrikov and Sillinger lit the world on fire, but they were impressive in spurts. But, you know, Columbus is a team that they always seem to find a way to pop into the playoff picture when you least expect it. And so I don't see this period being a rebuild. I really don't. I see it being like a retool with cap space and with, you know, an outstanding prospect pool. And a big difference from what it was a couple of years ago, because they had a lot of problems. All right, now let's move on to Ottawa. They're picking 7. Last year, you went with Boucher at 10. You had a weird draft last year with Ostapchuk, although he's pretty good this season. And with, who's the other kid? Ben Roger. Now, Ben Roger, I watched him the other night playing paired with Heish. And it was in the Kingston game. And they were the number 1. Was it Kingston? I forgot which. Where is he? Ben Roger was paired with Heish. I'm pretty sure that was the pairing. I forgot. It slipped my mind on what team they were on. But you can watch some of these playoff games a day, you lose track. But those are their first 3 picks. And Sens fans weren't happy with it. Now, the thing with Boucher is he was on the NTDP. He went to BU. He left BU to play in the OHL. And, it's been slow going for him. Is it with the Auto 67s he played for? I know I talked about it on the podcast. So, after 2 years ago, the 2 drafts prior, you got Stützle and Sanderson. Some of those other picks you guys weren't happy with, like Sokolov in the second round. All right, he was okay in Belleville. Belleville situation, they were pretty good this year. And the good thing about Belleville is you're getting the goaltending. You're getting pretty good goaltending. Sogard and the kid Gustafsson. And now you have this other goalie, Merrilainen, although he's kind of up and down. All right, Carolina 2-0 up on Boston after 20 minutes. Dorian and Mann will be running the draft again. I think the intent was they have such an outstanding young nucleus that it starts with Tkachuk and Stützle. You throw in Shabbat in there. You throw in Batherson. You throw in Pinto. There's a lot of talent there. Formanton. That I think that the pick was, all right, we don't need these elite scoring guys. We got plenty of those. We need these physical, hard-nosed types that help you win playoff series, right? Guys that win battles in the corners, guys that are willing to, take checks. And so I think that's what they were, thinking when they drafted Boucher. That it was a need pick. He was not the 10th best. He was not the 10th best player available in that draft. They would say, well, he was the best player available. No, he was. No. He was not. No shame. I mean, it was just, again, he was overdrafted. And right now it's looking at a pick that's going to be a long-term project, but you can't write him off just yet. And there's always a chance that once he gets to the AHL and he's healthy, that Boucher will be a real menace and a tough guy to play against. So considering that they went cute last year, I go pure. I don't go anything need, none of that shit. I go pure skill, whether it be, Nazar's there or, if Geeky's there or Miroshnichenko, although they're not really big on drafting Russians from Russia. Lekar and Mackey might be a kid that you want to take a shot just because of all those playmakers you have up front. You get a no-shit sniper in Lekar and Mackey, and I think he'll be more of a sniper than Sokolov, more of a sniper than Jorvinti. So one of those Ugarden kids, whether it be Osland or Ogren, it seems like a good fit for Ottawa. But the last thing I'll say about the Sens is this. You got to be careful when using pressure-free, final third of the season results as a way to assess or analyze the future of the franchise. You have to consider the other teams in that conference. You have to consider the other teams in that division, not only just the contending teams and the elite teams, but also those who are rebuilding alongside you. So you have 4 rebuilding teams at the bottom, right? Montreal, Ottawa, Buffalo, and Detroit. And you got the 4 powerhouses, Toronto, Boston, Florida, and why am I drawing a blank? Boston, Florida, Tampa Bay. So how much longer can you guys wait? It might take a goalie situation like a Shesterkin where the goalie just steals the show and he's able to win you guys games. And as long as you guys are in the playoff hunt, that's the key thing. Get off to a good start, be in the playoff hunt like Anaheim did this year for at least the first 2 or 3 months to at least let people know, hey, you have to take us seriously. Because I think people stopped taking you guys seriously a long time ago, and that plays into why you guys won a lot of games in the second half. So, again, I think you want, like, mind-numbing skill. If you guys aren't happy with the defense, if you think that, Clevin was overdrafted, although he could fill a significant need and be a physical on-ice presence. If you feel that Brandstrom isn't turning out what you thought he'd turn into, and the way it's looking right now, that you want to look at a defenseman like a Nemeth or a big mean kid like a Jiricek. And listen, if you get, but he's a righty, he'll fit. if you look at, let's say, prospect wise, because Bernard Docker didn't have a great year this year for Belleville, so maybe you're worried about him a little bit. You have to wait and see. So this is all about covering your ass and having contingencies. That you draft, let's say Marash, what's his name, Jiricek, and now you're looking at a top 4 of Shabbat, Sanderson, down the road, right? When Shabbat's like 30 or 29, you'll have Jiricek, Sanderson, and Clevin, and those types of guys, they'll shut down Braden Point. They'll shut down the perfection line. They'll shut down Huberdeau and Barkov. Not entirely, but that's how you want it. You want to have like that similar to what Minnesota had this year. Not Minnesota, Calgary, where they had those those 2 outstanding defense pairings. You just throw them out against anybody. So, but yeah, again, Ottawa, you fired Pierre Dorian, and I forgot about Leslie Thompson, but he's more of like a power play specialist. All right, Detroit at 8, the Red Wings. Reasons to be positive, reasons to be skeptical. They finally got rid of the coach. So that's a reason to be positive. They improved in the standings. Another reason to be positive, albeit not by much. They'll have 2 of the 3 Calder finalists, in my opinion, and Raymond and Side was sign of being a unanimous winner. If he does not win it unanimously, then that vote better go to Zegras or better go to Raymond. If a freaking Toronto writer votes Bunting over Side, listen, we know what clickbait is, right? Clickbait it's the Carnival 10 theory. It's the new way to describe Pulitzer's Carnival 10 theory. The Carnival 10 theory in journalism was you'd have a carnival tent, a big tent, like a circus tent, and outside it would be a dude with like a top hat and a cane. And what would he say? Step right up, step right up. Inside we have the world's tallest man. Inside we have a woman with 9 heads. And so but you have to pay first to get in. You can't say, okay, I'll walk in and then take a look and then decide whether you pay and then you walk in. So it's a similar situation with the clickbait today with these news stories. And so you have to be careful with the writers when they're voting, because they know that by being controversial, by being the dissenting opinion, so to speak, that will draw attention to their brand, their paper, their site, whatever they do. And some of these writers are so shallow that they'll do that. They also hold grudges too. They hold grudges. They also play favorites. Now you could say, well, Steve, isn't that kind of like the whole point? Like you play favorites, you pick your favorite. Yeah, but you can't tell me that Mike Bunting had a bigger impact on his team than Moritz Seider on his. Seider was a huge deal this year. Now, I wouldn't go as far as to say that Seider was perfect defensively. You want to watch just Twitter highlights, then fine. You're going to think, oh my God, Seider's a vacuum cleaner. Hey, he had some issues this year defensively. The Red Wings were one of the worst defensive teams in the league this year. It wasn't just the goaltending. But it's pretty clear to me that you're going to have 2 of the top 3 rookies in the league this year in the Calder voting. And, you got Zadina and you got Veleno. You got Mike Rasmussen. All these guys seem to have either bounce back seasons or promising initial stints. Although Hronek took a step back, or a big step back. You still got guys in the form like Berggren. Jared McIsaac, when healthy, looked pretty good for Grand Rapids. The kid Sabrango, really good defensive defenseman who's got decent wheels. And then, of course, Simon Edvinsson, who I beat up a lot. He was pretty much Frölunda's like number 2 and number 3 this year, and had a very impressive campaign for Frölunda. And he signed his deal, and so he'll be in camp next year, and we'll get to see what he is. And then of course Kosa having a fantastic year for the Edmonton and the WHL. I mean, you can't beat him. He's just a brick wall. So although Red Wings fans are like, oh, we're almost there, watch out for us next season. Hey, listen, the other team's got to say too. Ottawa feels the same way. Buffalo, after their second half, they feel the same way. And if Montreal has Carey Price back, then it's going to be a similar situation where they feel like they're able to challenge for that wild card spot. You're not going to challenge for the division either. It's going to be for the wild card. Boyum and Mazur, great play in the Frozen Four. I talked about it on the podcast. If you missed a couple of podcasts ago, the Vollander and Niederbach, very high on them in their draft year. So it's coming. It's coming. It's just a matter of really, it's going to be very Darwinian. It's going to be survival of the fittest. Only the strong survive. Natural selection, whichever metaphor or saying you want to use to describe those four bottom teams in the Atlantic. That if we were going to pick one to challenge for a wild card spot, who would you pick? I would have to lean towards Ottawa, only because it looks like their goaltending is further along. But if the Sabres go out and get, with all their assets, and they get a legit goalie, and now you got Deline playing, and we'll talk about the Sabres in a second. But again, it all depends. Yzerman now, he's going to be in year 4. So when you're drafting 10, 11, 12 guys a year like the Wings have, like what do you really pick? What are you looking for? You don't need to draft a goalie because you got the goalie last year. You don't really need to draft a defenseman, but it wouldn't hurt. I want to see them draft a center. I want to see them draft a center that we've been asking them to draft for a long time. Rasmussen is really the only. I mean, Niederbach is a very good center. Dowan Nielsen's a good center prospect. Veleno's a good center prospect. But you want and I thought that Veleno was going to be a franchise center, and I don't know if he'll ever turn into more than a middle six, but if Larkin, he had a. I like the way he played this year. That if he wants to be a career Red Wing and just stay there and sign a legacy contract, that's going to impact the farm system, and kids are going to want they're going to want to play. And if you're going to always go with Dylan Larkin as your number one center, but maybe draft someone to push him. And I don't know if they really have anybody in the system right now who's really pushed him. The kids they have are in Europe, so maybe in camp this year that happens. And Larkin's like, wait a minute. But Larkin's he's a good teammate. He's a good player. So I don't want to hate on the guy. But you got plenty of centers in this draft if that's what you're looking for. I mean, I'll go down the list. Wright, Savoy, Cooley. If you want to consider Gauthier Slavkovsky, that's 5. Jack D. Hughes is 6. Lambert 7. He plays center. Geeky 8. Nazer 9. Oslin 10. And then you got Delbel, Belouz, and Beck, if you want to count them, if you're big into the OHL types. Ludwinski plays center. Marco Kasper, remember, he's an Austrian kid. Maybe they want to have a guy who speaks German, so he can be friends with Mo Side. I mean, again, there are, and it doesn't just end, by the way. This is a deep draft. I keep saying it. People want to disagree with me. That's their opinion. I think it's a strong draft, very deep. You're going to have an entire second round of first-round caliber defensemen. So that in itself, with all those European snipers like Mayshaw and Nuchev and Perivalov and Kulich, come on, this is legit. One of my podcasts, when I went over the groupings with the defensemen, I mean, this is a defense-heavy draft. Playmakers more so than, physical types. But Red Wings they're playing with house money, but I would like to see them draft a center. All right, let's move on to number 9, talk about the Buffalo Sabres. Didn't do the Ranting Ron podcast yesterday. We'll probably do it next week. Well, I think maybe Wednesday, tomorrow we'll do it. So I'll give you my thoughts on that. So I don't want to steal too much of the thunder there. You'll just have to tune in. The Sabres, I mean, what can you say? That second half was very promising. Incredibly promising. It's exactly what you wanted. You got rid of Eichel. The Eichel saga. Remember that the Eichel saga dominated. The Eichel saga last year dominated it's 1-0 Tampa. Stamkos. Hold on a second. Wait. Hold on. Hedman. 2-0 Tampa. Game 5 in Toronto. Shit, dude. No, not again. Not again. I'm not a Leafs fan, but we'll see. Strange things have happened. Remember, I did pick the Leafs to go to the Stanley Cup against Colorado and get smoked. But I don't know. Down 2-0. Tampa. Now you got to beat Tampa back to back. If you lose this game, you got to beat Tampa twice in a row. And that hasn't happened since Columbus did in 2019. And that's sweet. Different team. Tampa back then compared to what they are now. Anyway, we're talking about the Sabres. Really, I mean, everything has fallen into place, right? Everything has worked. Rasmus Dahlin playing like a Norris caliber defenseman. You trade away Eichel, you get Peyton Krebs, and Krebs and Cousins are just a joy to watch. Tage Thompson, a 30-goal scorer. Middlestat looked good at the end of the season. You're getting good depth play out of guys like Asplund and Victor Olofsson. Alex Tuck, I mean, he's healthy. He could be a real difference maker. There's a lot to like about the Sabres. And now, on top of that, you're adding all these prospects that are coming in. I mean, Power, Rosen, Quinn, and the three guys in, Matthias Samuelsson on defense. You got Ryan Johnson coming in addition to Power. And I mean, I got the list down here. I mean, you got three outstanding goalie prospects in Luukkonen, Devin Levy that you got from Florida, and the Portillo kid from Michigan. The Poltapov was fantastic for Krasnaya Armia in the KHL, the MHL finals, the Harlamov Cup. There's just a lot of things to like about the Sabres right now. And if you were a season ticket holder and you were kind of, I'm not promising you that they'll make the playoffs next year. And if you want to spend your money on the Bills, be my guest, okay? Because Josh Allen, man, what a gem he is. But you should be going to that arena. You should be packing it in as best as possible. You don't like the Pagulas, you want to stick it to them, fine, be my guest. But there's a lot of positivity surrounding the Sabres right now. It's a little bit of a different scenario. Remember how I talked about the Canadians, how it's just confusion, anger, resentment. That's not the case with the Sabres right now. That was the case last year, right? We were a little good with the Eichel thing. Like, it was bad blood, bad news. That's all done with. That the Sabres were a very tough team to play against. They won. Now, of course, the pressure was off, but they won big games. They won big games against good teams down the stretch last year. They beat Toronto. They beat Tampa. So it's there. You guys could see, the light is, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, to use the cliche that's pretty common when it comes to rebuilds. But on top of all that, they got the kids down in Rochester, Quinn and Peterka, the first two picks of theirs in the 2020 draft. I mean, they no one had an answer for them. And to a degree, Ruotsalainen as well, the little Finnish kid that he played for the Sabres as well. So, you got 2 first-round picks now. You're picking at, what are you picking at? You're picking at 9 and 16. That's good. That's good. You could trade. You could move up if there's a guy you like. And remember, you don't really need a defenseman, because if you look at, like, what would the top 4 be? It would have to be, I guess, a combination somewhere involving, let's see, like, down the road, right? Prospect depth chart. And we'll include Dahlin. He's your number 1. And then you got Owen Power. And then you got Ryan Johnson. And then you got Matthias Samuelsson. And then on top of that, if you want to throw Jukka Harju into the mix, fine. And so listen, if you want to add a defenseman, I think it would be okay. You could go, defense, if one of those elite defensemen, but you'll have an elite defenseman available at 9, you'll have an elite defenseman available at 16. So just keep that in mind. But center ice, you guys are set. You guys are set at center ice. I don't even think you need to put Quinn as a centerman anymore. You can keep him at right wing where he belongs. But a lot of good things about the Sabres right now. And buy your tickets. Support the team. Buffalo's a great town. Good people. Good food. And you're our last line of defense from the Canadian hordes up north. All right, let's talk about Anaheim at 10. Similar situation with the Sabres, but whereas like last year they were one of the worst teams in the league, and then they gave you a little taste of what the future might hold. Oh, Jamie, what's up, man? Jamie Busol joins the chat. We're talking about all the lottery teams. Rangers not included in that. But anyway, the Ducks, the only difference between the Ducks and the Sabres is that although they finished close in the standings, Anaheim was in a playoff position to start the season for about the first 3 months. And remember, they played Colorado well. Like they look pretty good. And a lot of it was driven by the young kids, right? You saw young kids like Zegras and Isaac Lundestrom and Jamie Drysdale. And, Sonny Milano had a bounce back, or really the best year of his career after he had the low point was when he got arrested with, was it AJ Greer? They didn't pay a bill, or they left the club. There was a fight, some shit like that a couple years ago. But Milano being a New Yorker, Zegras being a New Yorker, it looked like it was a pretty good match. And then you got, of course, Mason McTavish, who's primed, I guess, and ready to go. It's just a matter of time with him. But the big difference was that you guys went from having that really strong first half and then just completely plummeting in the second half. You sold off guys. Getzlaf is going to retire. So with this particular draft, looking at the farm system, you got plenty of wings. You're pretty good in the wing position. Braden Tracy, remember we were a little down on him. He had a pretty good year this year in San Diego. Jacob Perreault, although he is not reliable defensively and almost a liability, but he's got that elite shot. And then on top of that, you have the kid Passageo that you drafted last year. Not the best skater, but he's an elite. So you have plenty of like legit elite snipers, right? You have guys that could bury the puck. And remember how Blake McLaughlin is going to be done with college. He's coming in. You got Bo Grew, who might be one of the best, I guess, shutdown penalty killing centers out of all the prospects in the entire league. You got really good goalies with Dostal. Obviously, they got to make a decision on Gibson, but of course, on top of that, you got a new GM. You had to let go of Murray stepped down. What was his deal? They said he was mean. He was like an alcoholic, and he was like a toxic work environment. I've been through that. It sucks. But big save. So Carolina, the second period just started. And San Diego was okay this year. Obviously, Anaheim's prospect pool can't compare to LA's. But again, we're looking at the nucleus. They're going to have cap space. So you're moving on from the Lindholms and the Mansons and the Rakels and the Getzlafs. And you're going to basically give the keys to the castle to Drysdale and Zegras. This is what we predicted. And of course, I don't know if I mentioned Troy Terry. I mean, one of the top goal scorers in the league, 5th round pick from 2015. So lots of things to be excited about if you're a Ducks fan, but you got to deal with the fact that the Kings are ahead of you. They're in the playoffs. They got a better farm system. So we'll just have to wait. But as far as the draft goes, when you lose Lindholm and Manson, you got to find a way to replace them. So Olin Zellweger is having just a phenomenal season in the WHL, scoring wise. But he's not like Manson, and he's not like Lindholm, where you needed guys like that were legit number one defensemen. Where I would say Zellweger, if all things works out, he's like an Adam Fox type, and we're seeing right now that Adam Fox, he might be a number one based on his brilliance and his IQ and his production. But he ain't shutting shit down. Like he's an offensive defenseman who needs a lot of help out of his partner. And with his partner Lindgren being hurt, we're seeing the end result. So, you got the kid Axel Anderson, right? That you got from Boston. He looked pretty good in the AHL. He's more of like a power play, especially his thing is the big shot. So I don't know which way the Ducks are going to go, but they could look at the defense situation two ways, because you don't need centers. You don't need snipers. Goaltending, you'd be overdrafting if you draft a goalie that high, because when you got that long list of, and McTavish, I think what the plan would be is now McTavish is like a Getzlaf, maybe a little bit meaner. So you can do a 1-2 punch of Zegras and if I'm forgetting anybody, I apologize, but you can do a 1-2 punch of Zegras and McTavish at 1-2, then Lundestrom, perfect third line center, and then Bo Grew is your fourth line center, perfect role. It's second round pick. Listen, I know we want to see him put up points, but perfect fourth line checking center, and you could roll 4 lines like a Cal Clutterbuck, right, or Secaucus. I forgot who's the center on that the Islander fourth line, the infamous one. And if you look at the wings, I mean, just pick. You got wings all over the place, all these snipers. That may be that defense would be the way to go if you're looking at need, okay? And So do the Ducks look at it like, no, there's a clear line, a separation between Nemec and Jiricek and a couple other guys versus the rest? Do you go after Korchinski? Not necessarily, because you already have those playmakers on the back end in Drysdale and Zellweger. I think you want clean in-game puck managers, and that's where a Mintyukov or a Nemec or a Jiricek come into play. But Jiricek offers you the physicality, which is Mintyukov and Coach and Nemec really don't. We'll see. But if I'm the Ducks, I go defense. All right, let's move on and talk about the San Jose Sharks. So the Sharks, weird situation for them because of the cap and the contracts that they're committed to. They got a lot of graybeards on that squad. It's been the case for so long. And remember what I said, like, hey, listen, they used to always make the playoffs. Now you're looking at 3 years in a row without making the playoffs, and that's no bueno. And I don't know what the long-term strategy is going to be for them, but in terms of the farm system and the draft picks that they've made, I talked about Boyle. Well, guys, if I said I've talked about it, I'm really referring to my podcast that I did the other night. But they, really started with in 2019. Because remember they took a gamble on Merkley, and Merkley, we knew it was a gamble. We knew why it was going to be a gamble, and the good thing is that offensively, if here's the thing with Merkley, if you're going to get Brent Burns offense and Brent Burns defense in a Merkley, you take it. All right, it's that simple. If you get a fraction of Brent Burns' offense and Brent Burns' defense, you probably still take it, right? If you're looking at, let's say, a 35-point season or 40-point season, a guy that could be a spare part on the power play, bottom pairing type. And there are similarities to Tony DeAngelo in that, not just that they're right shot and smaller playmaking defensemen, but that they had a tag applied to them before the draft. And although Merkley hasn't moved anywhere, he's been with the same organization since 2018, DeAngelo's moved around a lot. Oh my God. Forward just got walked. But anyway, still 2-0, by the way, Carolina, Boston. But if you look at like that young Hurdle and Timo Meier, and I've said it a million times, I absolutely love Mario Ferraro. And they got other kids. They got the Noah Gregors and they got the Kemelevskis. Remember, they always go for the older kids. The UDFA types to be playing for the Barracuda down in the farm, and so you have an older player there, but they've gotten a little bit younger. So although we see guys like Joachim Blichfeld put up points down in the AHL with the Barracuda, like they've accumulated a core, a young nucleus of kids. Highly, highly talented. Weisblatt, Bordelot, Eklund. You want to throw Merkley in there. You got the fantastic undersized scorer in Gushin. Brandon Cole, all right, he had a great season, but again, he was supposed to be good a couple years ago. And so when I see kids have coming out parties, let's say statistically, North Bay was never really good until they added some help with Matvei Petrov now and Co. And they got Ty Nelson and some pretty good goalies down there in North Bay in the OHL. But now the Sharks are going to add yet another high quality pick to that arsenal. And this is where I would focus on the defense and not goaltending, because like I said, there's no option for goal in the first round. But I definitely focus on the defense, because if you look at all their better prospects, they're mostly forwards. And I know I mentioned Santeri Hataka. I mentioned Merkley. They got the kid, what was his name? Larocque, that they drafted last year. Gannon or Gage Larocque, big kid. And then the Quebec League import, Nyazev. Like they have decent prospects, but they'll be able to walk away with a really good defense. If they have to overdraft, if they have to take a shot on a defenseman over a forward, if you're a Sharks fan, you take that. So let's just say that Jiricek is off the board and Nemec is off the board, and you're picking at 11, I wouldn't mind going for not really Korchinski, although he is freaking so gifted. But this is where I'd start looking at the guys like a Odelius maybe, or like a Mintyakov, or, I mean, Central Scouting and their freaking rankings with the way they punished the Russian kids was criminal almost. But and if you could get a Karamazov or a Grudinin or a dude in the second round, fine. But those are all first round quality. So then maybe you want to take that gamble. You look at a guy like Denton Matachuk in the first round, who also a very good puck manager. So with the Sharks, they don't really have a template when it comes to the draft. They draft from everywhere, no matter what league, age, overages, skill set, size. They don't care. So they're again, the cap is the biggest issue. I think the cap is what's really hurting them in the NHL. All right, Columbus, we already talked about you guys. So you guys know the deal. If you're going to go both defensemen, fine. If not, there's really, you could go any direction. If you're looking for that franchise center, if they're grooming Chinakov, they're just kind of playing Chinakov and Sillinger at wing. I know Sillinger, I think, played more center than Chinakov did. Kent Johnson, he could play either or, but maybe he's better off at the wing. He'll be like a Bjorkstrand, maybe a more high-end version of Bjorkstrand, just because the shot, the wrist shot, the slap shot, the backhand, the hands, it's phenomenal. So really, I'll be able to, I haven't done a mock draft yet. I got to do my homework still on the Blue Jackets, but it's a good position to be in. All right, let's talk about the Icelanders, New York Icelanders. Why are they picking 13th, if you ask me? They had a 13-game road trip to start the season, and the team got crushed by COVID, and there was only one spot up for grabs, and ultimately it went to the Rangers, and the Rangers had the best goalie in the game. That's why. But I understand they fired Trotz, but Sorokin played Vezina caliber goaltending most of the season. The other guy didn't, Simeon Varlamov. And they'll have some changes to make with expiring contracts, but they got to pay Barzell eventually, because remember, he gave him a little bit of a sweet deal when he was. But now he's going to be in UFA range, and Allen's going to have to pay. So Lou firing him, definitely didn't agree with it. Firing Trotz, but from a prospect pool standpoint, listen, watched a lot of Bridgeport this year, so I'm well steeped in. What is it, Sound Tiger? Is that what you guys are called, the Sound Tigers? Or Bridgeport Islanders now. So I'm well steeped in, I don't even know the team name. But anyway, I do know the players. And so when you're looking at the list, Durando, underrated, late round pick. I don't really know. Remember, the Islanders are a veteran team. They played a lot of kids this year. They played Koivula. They played, well, if you want to call him a kid, he's 24. Kiefer Bellows. They played Wallstrom a lot. A lot of these kids were almost regulars. They played Sebastian Aho, the defenseman type. They played Robin Salo. And remember, that was the good thing that came out of the COVID outbreak for the team, was all these young kids had a chance to go from Bridgeport to the island. And some impressed, like Robin Salo. Some didn't, and looked like fishes out of water, no pun intended. I just say that because it's, Connecticut, Long Island, the ferry. I want to talk about Simon Holmstrom, though. Statistically, fantastic, bounce back, best AHL season of his career. Controversial first round pick. We said at the beginning of the show. The issue with his season is he's still a perimeter player. He's still kind of soft on the boards. He still watches the puck a lot. So I don't know how that's going to fit in what the Islanders got going on at the NHL level. But still, in the end, good size. He's like a dual threat now. I always consider him to be a sniper first, but he's more of a playmaker now. Salo is stud, just outstanding. One of the best defensemen in the AHL. And if you watch him, you'll see why. But you know who else is pretty good this year, defense-wise, was Wotherspoon. 97 draft pick, or 97 born, 2015 draft pick. The Islanders have been very patient with the defenseman. It's paid off. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. But Blake Jenkins, Colin Adams, these are energy depth types. I know Adams played on the top line with Koivula for a little bit. Adams is a smaller guy, Koivula being the big Finnish guy. Koivula is very good, by the way. He's a smart young man. He could play any role. He's a center. He could be a scoring center, a playmaking center, big body. He could be physical. But the guys like Newkirk and Jenkins and Durando and Adams, Bolduc, these guys, they're going to be down there for a while. And Van de Sample and Wotherspoon is still down there. And the Russian kid, remember him? What was his name? The little guy. Golishev, was that his name? So really the Islanders here, you look at the way the team is built. I don't think you guys need a defenseman. Noah Dobson is a future number one, future Norris caliber, Norris Trophy candidate. On the back end, it's reasonable to believe that Wahlstrom will be a 25 to 30 goal scorer perennially. So maybe you're looking at not really defense, but you're looking at just pure skill, because goal scoring was a big problem with the Islanders this year, especially in the beginning. So in that regard, if you're picking at 13, there's always going to be kids who fall. So out of all those centers I mentioned in the beginning, I think a guy like Geeky might fit the Islanders well, not only because of his size, but he's a pure playmaker. Now, when you go for size over, let's say the other guy, let's say a Brad Lambert who's faster, or Matthews Savoy who's faster. If you're going to compare Barzal, if you're going to compare, let's say, Savoy and Lambert to a guy like Barzal, well, shit, why don't I get two Matt Barzals? You know what I mean? But with the Islanders, too, they got to make a decision on Josh Bailey. They got Beauvillier took a step back this year. I was very disappointed in him. He was I love that kid. That kid is but is he like a Kreider where you have to wait, 5-6 years for him to start hitting the 25 to 30 goal range? Well, at least Kreider came close to that. So we'll see. But Skarek in goal looks like he's okay. You got Sorokin, so maybe that would be the 1-2 punch moving forward. I do think the Islanders can contend next year, though. I'd be scared of them. That's a proud group, but it just, again, firing the coach. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, really, was it that? I mean, I got to do my homework and figure out what exactly the deal was, but it just seemed like a rash move. All right, Winnipeg. A lot of changes were made. We all know about the elite plays in your top six. The issue with you guys is on defense. You guys have never recovered from the defense core that had Bufflin and Trouba and even Kulikov. And Morrissey. It hasn't been the same since. You got Smaller on the back end. Pionk is a point producer and playmaker. He's not very good defensively. You're not going to have him shut down. Now, Chris Letang is a good example of a small defenseman who just, much like Pedro Martinez is the pitcher, like pitchers reinvent themselves. They less fastball, more off speed. They have to change things up. That with, a guy like Pionk, or Letang, is that he's a reliable defensively now, in addition to being a very good puck mover and playmaker and power play quarterback. And Heinola, when I watched the Manitoba, the guys who really stood out were Gavanka, the big German kid, the playmaker, and oh my God, what's his name? Declan Chisholm. They really stood out. Whereas Heinola, the prize prospect who we've been waiting on for the last couple of years, he's still, I don't know if he's ever going to be the guy that we thought he'd become. Like he's basically a junior Pionk right now. And what got Winnipeg to the conference final? Not guys with like Aaron Pionk. They need some big boys on the back end. They need some beef, some shutdown guys. And listen, Cheveldayoff, that was his style of play when he played. He didn't have much of a career, but he's always been, a Western Canadian guy. He loves the he was a big defenseman himself. So it makes sense that he would want to draft big defensemen. So if you put a gun to my head and you're like, all right, who does Kevin Cheveldayoff have as his number one defenseman on his draft board? I'm saying freaking Jiricek. And if it's not Jiricek, maybe Mintyakov, maybe Owen Pickering, a guy that a lot of people seem to be high on. I'm less bullish on. But the NTDP defensemen, they don't have any big boys. They're mostly like Chesley is like I guess a mini Jake Sanderson, a poor man Jake Sanderson. But Casey and Letty And who's the other guy I'm missing? Well, Brustovich isn't eligible to next year, but still, the NTD, and they don't have like a Clevin this year or Matthias Samuelson like they've had in the past, or Keandre Miller. There's no NTDP defenseman with like a ton of size. At least I don't think there's. If I'm drawing a blank, I apologize. But I think the defense is the way for them to go. Really good prospects and playmakers and scorers. You don't need any of that stuff. You got the elite guys in the NHL level. You got guys like Cole Perfetti, waiting in the wings, and he could be an elite player or elite scorer one day. It's just a matter of time. So, just to go back to what made you good, which was a big, mobile, strong defense. All right, we only got 2 more to go. We'll go Vancouver, and then, Vegas, I won't talk about you guys. I'll talk about you later, but Buffalo, we talked about. So we'll wrap it up with Vancouver. Now, you guys were basically like a 600 team on the Bruce Boudreau, a phenomenal turnaround, just like Buffalo, but maybe even better than Buffalo in terms of second half. JT Miller was outstanding. Elias Pettersson, slow first half. He came back around in the second half. Quinn Hughes is still Quinn Hughes. You actually got to bounce back here from Tyler Myers. All the shit that I gave that guy, and not just myself, a lot of people, he bounced back. He had a really good season. And Demko, I would hope he gets some Vezina consideration because he really saved their bacon a bunch. OEL and Garland, I didn't watch the Canucks as often as you guys did, but it just seemed like OEL is on the way down. And Garland, although the effort's always there, maybe you want a little bit more out of him. Was it the kid I love, the Swedish kid, that Hoglander? I didn't see it. Every time I watched, he wasn't playing, so I don't know if he got hurt. But Podkolzin, full season out of him. He looked pretty good. He had some big moments. Okay, still a little rusty though. Horvat. So again, it's a really strong group of young guys. They seem to get along. And when Boudreau came in, maybe he was like the old grandpa. I don't know what it was like on the Travis Green, but the results weren't there outside of that, Cinderella run back in 2020. I'm sorry, just a ESPN. Ring the bell, ding. So the problem with the Canucks though is that the prospect pool and Abbotsford really don't have a whole lot. Remember I drew a blank on the Canucks prospect from last year. Klimovich was his name. I remember I drew a blank, but he was okay for Abbotsford this year. The few games that I did watch, was it Rathbone was really like the number one guy, the number one prospect, the defenseman. And I think he got drilled. He got hurt really bad. Well, we thought that Rathbone it was the reason why Ole Levy was bumped down the depth chart and that he would be a guaranteed in the one of the first 6 defensemen for the Canucks. And that didn't happen. But Rathbone is like really the number one in, here's what I wrote. Rathbone has been a well-discussed problem. I won't get into it. You'll read about it eventually. But Rathbone, Klimovich as well, and the Spencer Martin. I think those were the best to offer out of the group in Abbotsford, in the AHL, where you got disappointing season out of Jetwu. Jetwu, I don't know if we could save him. I think he might be done in terms of Carson Folk is another one. The Sealovs goalie's pretty good. When I watched him though, he wasn't in goal. It was the Spencer Martin kid, but you might not like to hear it, but based on the moves that Benning made and all the graduations, that Canucks probably have a bottom 10 prospect pool. But just remember that, like in terms of young studs as a foundation in the NHL level, you'd be among the top 10 in the league based on the personnel you have. So, I think sometimes you got to say, well, I really don't give a shit about the farm system right now. And if you're a Canucks fan, maybe you should think that way because of what you have at the NHL level. And there's always a chance that with the West being open and spots are going to be up for grabs, that I can't see the Canucks making a huge turnaround. And that the team that you saw in the second half is what you'll see all season in 2022-23. But, with all the trades that Benning made, not having first-round picks, now let's start to see them rebuild and replenish. You know what I'm saying? With Demko, you got a franchise guy right there. Mikey DiPietro, Silovs. I still think the goaltending, the goaltending depth is a little shaky. So that's why I'd wouldn't mind if the Canucks addressed it. Now, as far as the draft goes, you're picking 15. I'd like to see them work on focus on the defense because they have these, like, if you look at the young forwards, right? If you want to add Klimovich into that mix, on top of Hoglander, on top of Podkolzin, on top of Pedersen, on top of Horvat and Miller. I mean, they're not prospects; they're pretty old; they're almost in their 30s. And of course, Brock Besser. That you focus more on defense, and that the OEL acquisition, you understand why they did it. But I think you guys are okay at forwards. That's why I would lean towards the defense. All right, look at that. Just hit 2 hours. That's a first for me. I always kind of exaggerate, but this is exactly 2 hours in the book. So thank you for joining in. This will be on YouTube. It'll publish. It'll be around for the next couple of months, and we're going to do the same thing for the day one of the draft. This is the next time you'll see me on YouTube. And I don't know if I'll be able to do day 2 of the draft, but day 1 definitely. So thank you for listening in. And don't forget the podcast is the Draft Analyst Podcast, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, free draft blog, thedraftanalyst.com. And this is Prospect Film Room. So subscribe, like, comment, do whatever you got to do. And I'll see you guys in, I guess, 2 months. So take care.